I wanted to come and make a video on something that we all struggle with. I know I do. And that is forgiveness. So, I want to say about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I wrote something down and it came to me again yesterday. It's just been coming to me over and over again for the past few weeks. I'm not going to say like day after day after day because it's something that I struggle with. And I tell people all the time that it's very, very difficult for me to forgive, especially when I don't see that what has occurred that has hurt me or bruised me in some kind of way, that it hasn't changed. It's very difficult for me to move past that. So sometimes I have to like literally pick myself up out of a situation or something in order to be able to say forgiveness has happened. And sometimes that's not even really the case. Forgiveness has not happened. I just remove myself from the situation to where I don't have to think about the behaviors or the act that has occurred. So what I wrote was forgiveness is a journey that no man can predict. I mean, the Bible tells us that we have to forgive, Jesus forgave us, God forgives us. So we have to be able to forgive in order to receive that peace of mind, that peace from within, in order to carry on with our lives. And that sometimes is difficult. We get stuck on the acts and the behaviors of what caused us to be in a position to struggle with forgiveness. It's very, very difficult to see past it. So, I'm sitting here today with you guys as transparent as possible. I'm telling you, I struggle with forgiveness. I literally struggle with forgiveness, and it's something that I pray about, especially if you have to continue to live in that situation. You have to be around that situation. Forgiveness is extremely hard because the change that you want to see occur may not come as quickly as you would like for it to. So you sit there and you dwell on it and you dwell on it, and you're like, man, when is it going to come? It's not going to come in your time, because God says that there is a time for everything, there's a season for everything. So while you're going through that struggling process, what is it that you're learning about you? What is it that God is trying to show you? It's not to say that He's holding you from moving on, but what is it that you can do at that moment in time to praise God, to give God glory? What is it that you're doing that you can do? So, and I said all of that to say this is that um, sometimes that journey ends up being self reflection. And it's difficult because we don't always like to see ourselves in a mirror. We don't like to spotlight our flaws. We like to highlight all the good things about us, but we don't like to sit and say, oh my gosh, this is what's going on with me. This is what, oh my gosh, I didn't know this about me. How long have I been this way? Have you ever asked a person to describe who you are and they say something and you're like, that's not me? But then you ask another person to do the same thing, and they may say the same thing that the other person has said, and you're like, oh my gosh. So you start doing self-reflection, because what you need to know is that some things are reciprocated, behaviors are reciprocated, acts are reciprocated, forgiveness is reciprocated. You know what I'm saying? Acts of love is reciprocated. If you don't say thank you to someone, a particular person, what makes you think that they're going to say thank you back? So everything that I'm saying to you right now is that when it comes to forgiveness, it becomes a self-reflection process. And then not only that, but you have to be able to say, I'm going to truly forgive this individual, this person, and I'm going to move on with my life. Now, that doesn't mean that you forget what happened, but you just have to be able to say, I have to move on. Are you strong enough to do that? Again, I struggle with this. So, what I'm saying to you guys is nothing that I have not been through. I still go through it. We're all imperfect, and that's not an excuse. However, you have to make the choice. I'm going to forgive and I'm going to move on. If it's with a spouse or significant other, a friend, a family member, how do you deal with that individual once you forgive? Sometimes it requires you forgive and you walk away. You forgive, you limit how you interact with them. You forgive and and you sometimes you may have to forgive again, especially if you're married to that person, because you don't wake up one morning and say, I forgive you, but we're divorced today. Because even that's a process. You know what I'm saying? A significant other, you probably can say that, but how much time do you have invested into that, to that relationship, that friendship, that family member? And if you feel like their behaviors and acts are not going to change, then you may just have to decide you need to cut it off. You need to walk away. And there's nothing wrong with that. I say it all the time, peace of mind is priceless. And forgiveness is priceless as well. So, again, when you're talking about forgiveness, that journey is a struggle. And I wish you can snap your fingers and say, oh my gosh, I forgive you, move on. However, if you continue to put yourself in a situation, and then here's the thing too about forgiveness. And I was listening to I don't know what you call it, I guess a video last night, and it touched on forgiveness. And the young lady said that the best forgiveness is changed behavior. So if you are forgiving someone and you want to continue to be with that individual, whether it's a spouse, a friend, significant other, working relationship, whatever the case may be, if that person's behavior is not changing, it's going to be difficult to forgive and move on. There was an instance with I use me for an example. My personal struggle with forgiveness is that I hate to be lied to. You know what I'm saying? And this is like probably TMI right now. I hate to be lied to. I hate to be deceived in any kind of way. But when someone like look at me in my face and lie to me, and I know that they're lying to me, and they're trying to soup this lie up to make it seem like it's like a grand truth of some sort, I sit there and I was like, for one, I didn't have to listen to the lie. I put myself in a situation to listen to it. Now I'm putting myself in a situation to struggle with how can I actually believe what this person is going to say to me ever again. And then I'm putting myself in a position to where now I got to struggle with forgiveness. I know you lied. They know they lied. We both know that the lie occurred. So how do you both work through it? So that's difficult because sometimes we choose to be in situations that we know we don't want to forgive and that we don't want to stop talking about. Why? Why do we torture ourselves? But I guess that's my struggle is that especially if I know, sometimes you have to dig it up, and then sometimes you have to just allow time to just let things unfold for themselves, and that's okay. But when it happens, what do you do? How do you forgive? And that's something again that I struggle with, and I know that other people struggle with it as well, because we live in such a world where everything is glorified. You know what I'm saying? Infidelity is glorified, lying is glorified. I mean, deceit, everything is so glorified right now. I mean, you listen to music and everything is so pumped up and fluffed up and glorified that, when people talk about forgiveness, it's not that what I call that old school, and I say this all the time. And so if you be around me, I'm old school, that old school kind of way of behaving, that country way of presenting yourself, your personal values, that has a lot to do with forgiveness. So when it comes down to how we forgive someone, it's based on their actions. And if you're in a situation where you're forgiving the same person for the same thing over and over and over again, it might be time to just cut it loose. Just go ahead, walk away, and say, hey, I'm a big girl now. Charge it to the game, learning experience, we good. Because that person needs to work on themselves. And that's not something, you cannot change that person. And you can pray for them, wish them the best. Especially when it comes to family, you can, and that's the hardest thing, because how do you walk away from your family? How do you say to a family member, especially someone, maybe a sibling, that, I love you, but I need to just keep a distance? Because that's not the natural way to deal with your family members. It really isn't. So I said all of this to say is, if you're struggling with forgiveness, you're not by yourself, okay? And we have God's word, the Bible, that gives us many scriptures about forgiveness. And Satan will fight us. He'll fight against it. But you have to do it. I have to do it. And it's a journey. It's a process. So don't think you're struggling with this by yourselves. You're not. And sometimes you just have to, part of forgiveness too, and let me say this, part of forgiving someone is accepting, okay? So this is difficult, is accepting that it occurred. Whatever it is that put you in this situation to want to forgive someone, accept that it occurred. If you're sitting there and you're making excuses, or you are denying, or you haven't come to terms with it, it's going to be difficult. So you got to accept it. And it's hard. I'm telling you, it's hard. You got to accept the lie. You got to accept the behavior. You got to accept the deceit. And don't dwell on the actions, because then that just festers. That just makes that wound more open to more infection. So acknowledge it, acknowledge the wound, treat it, and work on healing. Does that make sense? So, on this wonderful Wednesday, it is my hope that you, myself, and those that are involved in this forgiveness process can accept and move on. I have to do that, just like you guys have to do it. So I'm not saying that I'm beyond this, because I'm in this struggle with you guys. I'm in this struggle with you. And you don't want this to take such a long time that it's consuming your life. It's keeping you from enjoying your life. I've been there, and I just had a moment because I felt like I needed to say that. You don't want this to hinder your life in any kind of way. You get stuck, and you may never get that apology. You may not even be able to speak to that person ever again. You may not even be around that individual anymore. So don't get stuck on, well, the next time I see it, or next time I talk, or whatever. Don't get stuck on that, because you may never get it. You may never get that apology, but you still got to forgive. I still got to forgive. The next person is going to have to work on forgiveness. And so sometimes we are the examples that other people are going to look for in their journey to forgiveness. And how do you want them to see that example? What picture do you want to paint for them when it comes to forgiveness? Think about that. Thought I would share.